you've set up your business now with enough systems and structure that you no longer live in your own territory, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I live in Puerto Rico.
What? Puerto Rico? Where's that?
Yeah, the Caribbean.
All aboard!
Outdoor service owners, rise and shine. It's time to start fueling your success, one adventure at a time. Welcome to Outdoorsy Entrepreneur, brought to you by House Call Pro, where business owners explore ways to take charge and level up. We are your host. I'm Kevin Fontaine, and this is my homeboy, Patrick Harders. Join us on a journey every Wednesday. Like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel, and listen to wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on our social media platforms at Outdoorsy Boss. What's been going on, Pat?
Been a busy week. I've been a bachelor this week. So my wife and daughter are down at a swim meet in Florida. And so it's Ben and I, we're managing the house and business and everything else. So
hold it down.
Yep.
Microwaving a lot of shit for dinners.
When I cook, I'm on the smoker.
Nice. You got the time for the smoker every day?
Yeah, I make time.
You make time.
Yeah, I like eating meat, so it's always cooking something up. That's if I'm gonna make something, I want to be outside.
No doubt. Awesome. Well, today, guys, we're interviewing some other service owners out there, talking about their trades they chose, what drew them into that industry, et cetera, and of course, what's the profit like, right? As owning that kind of business, home service business, we want to explore different home services out there. Mm-hmm. And we're excited to announce we have today with us Damien Sanchez. He owns his own mosquito control service. And let's bring Damien to the stage. Hey, Damien, how's it going?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Kevin. Patrick.
So Damien, it's great to get a chance to talk to you about, what you're doing in your business and how you've grown your business and the struggles and, victories you have. Obviously, like as a child, it's every kid's dream to eradicate mosquitoes. So, tell us about your journey. Like, how did you get into the mosquito control business? What drew you into it? What sustained you? And tell a little bit about like your start in mosquito control.
Yeah. Well, as a kid, I did hate mosquitoes, but I'll tell you, I did not dream about becoming a mosquito control, owner of a business. I think my dream was to be a firefighter. And I did that for 18 years.
Damn.
Retired in 2015. But I think shortly after the housing market kind of crashed, we had sold our house at the top of the housing market, moved out to the East Coast, my wife and I. That was right about the time we started to have children. So my wife stopped working and I had to figure out like, all right, well, how am I going to, increase my income? And so a unique thing about the fire department is, we had 24-hour shifts. So on my off days, I was trying to think of like, well, do I get a second job? Do I, try and start a business? And, what I kind of settled on was, I had a little bit of money from selling our house and, I figured, what better bet to put the money on than me. Like the franchise was presented to me. It's a Mosquito Squad. This was in 2007. I think Mosquito Squad started in 2005. And so it was brand new, but it was like more of an installation business at that time. And, what we decided to do was like, well, we wanted to focus on the recurring revenue, where we provided service, on a rotating basis every 2 to 3 weeks. And, it really was, there's something about, that model. And I was like, all right, well, I can do this on my days off and, jump right into it. So I signed up and I bought a territory. And
cool.
That's how I got started.
Nice. So from firefighter to mosquito swatter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's a big change, obviously. Like, you look at a fire department, it's very regimented. Like,
yes.
You're going to, obviously, it's like when a fire breaks out, everything is pandemonium and you're running. But, day-to-day activities, cleaning, doing all of that. It's a very regimented, structured organization. Going to your own business, did you find the same thing, that you were naturally very structured and organized?
No, I tend to be very unstructured and disorganized. And that's where, it's like once I started the business, and ideally, like when you go into a franchise system, like if you were to buy a Mosquito Squad franchise now, the systems are in place. It's very organized. There's training. Everything is dialed in, as a franchise should be. When I started, it was the Wild West. Nobody really knew what they were doing. We were all just trying to figure it out as we went, which actually worked pretty well for my personality type, because I was gung ho about like, well, let's just figure this out. And I need to make some money because, I've got a wife and child. And, but it really did start exposing me to like kind of the three areas of business, systems, processes, and people.
Nice.
And so, and really on the system side, where I'm not naturally terribly organized. If you look at my desk right now, it's not organized. There's stuff all over the place, but it's like, I know where they are, where everything is, and, I can get work done. But once you have some systems in place, then that, you start to, get conformed to. And that's what the fire department was really good at, was kind of having the systems, what you're going to do and the processes. So
What first, how did you find out about that franchise? It was in Virginia.
Yeah. So Nick, I did find out about this franchise. There's a friend of a friend that brought this book into a birthday party, and, I saw it and I was like, huh. I was like, I could do that. 2007, went down, kind of learned about the franchise system, and
Right.
I signed up. I was like the ninth franchise that purchased.
So looking at your first employees, I mean, that's a big step, getting into hiring your first people. What did you do setting up your organizational structure and you're hiring your first people? And, what did you do well? What didn't you do well?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think my first hire went well at all. It was a disaster. It's just like, I was just like, do you have a pulse and do you breathe? And I'm like, great. And like, come on board. And, the first guy, he was, I don't know, he was like 18 or 19. And I got him. I took a week off and I trained him all week. He's like, I gotta quit. I'm like, I was about to pull my hair out. I didn't have any, and as far as like, getting through, it's like, when I realized like, I could do like my first year, I did $67,000 in sales.
Okay.
And I did that by myself.
Right.
But I was, working full time for the fire department. Like I couldn't do any more. I mean, I was trying to answer the phone. I was learning from the bookkeeper how to reconcile QuickBooks. And then I was doing data entry. I mean, it's just like every aspect of the business I was physically doing. And so by the following year, I was like, I have to have somebody that can answer phones, or else like I'm gonna fail. And then I finally found somebody else. I think I lost like that second year, I lost like 30 pounds just from the stress.
Wow.
And finally found somebody. I was putting out Craigslist ads, and then found somebody that was going to come and work. And, it was great. She was able to I was able to pass things off to her that I just couldn't do. And, she was able to step in and, help out.
Yeah.
And miraculously, like we grew from that second year, we went from like 67 to 187,000 in sales.
What point were you able to quit the firefighting?
So, I didn't end up leaving till 2015, June of 2015, but it was something that was always on my mind. I think one of the hard things is like when the fire department is good. I mean, it didn't pay great. I mean, I think I made like $55,000, which was really beneficial to us, especially starting a business, because I didn't have to take anything out of the business. But they also covered your health insurance and all that. And so that was really hard to take that jump of letting that go and going all in on the business. And, it was scary because you go through and you're like, okay, well, now I don't have my health insurance paid for. I don't have this other income stream. Like I have to be all in with this business. and because it's no
Right.
longer just a side hustle.
Yeah. But that gave you a few years to get started and get to know, have an expectation of revenue and
Yeah.
production and all that stuff. And now, as far as getting customers, was that all on your shoulders? You had to go market and advertise and put your name out there and build up
Yeah.
a list of clients.
Yeah. And back then it was hard. I think now people, the industry in mosquito control has been, most people know about it. But when I started, but for mosquito control, everybody was always like, does it work? And so the
Yeah.
objections that you got were different back then because
Okay.
everybody was just newly exposed to it. It was really a brand new industry.
What about so to kill mosquitoes, can you apply a granular, or is it back then when you started? I know now it's a lot of sprays, but
Yeah.
has it always been spraying for mosquito control, or?
So the original model for Mosquito Squad was installing misting systems. So, it was basically you get a customer and then you get this big upfront cost and then you get like a small recurring revenue stream. But you were always going out and troubleshooting and figuring out like what happened? Did a squirrel chew through a line? And so there was just like, you had to do a lot of thinking. Whereas the other option that was just kind of coming out at the time was like, all right, you have this backpack spray that they used in like orchards, and you just go out and you spray the foliage and mosquitoes land on it and they die. And so, it was just a much better model because you could scale that model much easier than trying to scale a installation with like a small service attached to it. And so that's what we chose to focus on, was, that recurring model, which is now what dominates the industry now. It's like everybody does. There's very few misting systems anymore.
A lot of times as business owners, like, you have that firefighter mentality where you're just trying to solve a problem quickly. You ever have instances where you hired someone quickly, or you bring in family members to help out? And if you did, how'd that work and what did you learn?
Well, I think this is another situation where I lost, like 20 pounds due to stress. But, I think one of the challenges is like when we were growing so fast, we started off first year, 67, second, almost 200, third year, 500,000, fourth year, we were doing 1 million. And when you're going through that growth, you're just going and saying like, oh, wow, can you fog a mirror? I need help. And you're just bringing people in, and then so you're hiring a lot and you're firing a lot,
Right.
which, but then culturally what happened was like, I think we had one core value, and that was like, get by. Like whatever you had to do just to get the work done and get by, like we did that. And, which was really problematic, like especially once you reached a certain point, it's like, oh, now all these problems are showing up, and it's like, how do you've got these longtime people that have worked for you and your company's grown, and now they're trying to do things one way, the way you were doing them, and you're like, no, we can't do that way now. We have to change.
Damien, for revenue generated per employee, so I assume production wise, you would have a person in a truck solo and they would have a route.
Mm-hmm.
And then how many can they service a day typically?
So that really depended on the amount of mileage that a
Travel
truck was driving. So,
okay.
Because if you had really tight routes, you could get 2 guys on a truck and get 26 jobs done in a day. But if you had one guy and and the routes were spread apart and he's driving 110 miles, you may only get 14 or 15 jobs done.
So your service area was Virginia. What part of Virginia?
We're like inside the Beltway, DC, and then around Maryland.
Okay. Nice.
And we always had a drive. So like one of the things that we wanted to do, like back in 2016, like when we hit 3 million in sales, we were like, all right, we need to get a second location so that we can like shrink the amount of mileage that we're doing so we could get more jobs per day. Because we always had like a target number for how much revenue we wanted to generate per vehicle.
Right.
and the mileage kills that. Like if you can only get 16 jobs done a day, like you're not making that much money. So you have to bump that up and get those 4 to 6 extra jobs in per day per truck.
Do you let production take the trucks home, or do they have to come back, park, go home?
For the most part, if it makes sense for the organization, we will send a truck, especially if it's located far outside of where we normally service.
Okay.
We'll have people take a truck home, but for the most part, like we make everybody bring the truck home at night.
Okay.
Insurance and it's better not to, but unless it makes operational sense.
Yeah, you'll see your employee at a Walmart buying a
On a
keg of beer,
Saturday.
and you're like, "Damn!"
Oh, we've had guys like, which is you need GPS tracking, because we had guys like drive all the way up to Baltimore and go gamble.
Oh
And you're
my
like,
God!
what are you doing? Like, what was our lunch break? It's like, well, you drove an hour to get there and an hour back. Like, that's not your lunch break. So you get all kinds of craziness.
My God, that's when you got to swat them with a mosquito swatter.
Now you mentioned processes and systems, and Kevin is, adamant, like you need your systems, your processes. What did you feel was like the most effective things that you were setting up for yourself? Like what systems and what process, how'd you go about, first coming up with the idea of what you needed, and second, like how do you implement and make it happen?
Yeah. So one of the challenges, like when we first started the franchise system, they basically said they wanted you to put data entry in 4 different places. And so I did that for the first year. I was like, this is crazy. I'm spending my nights typing things into 4 different locations. I'm like, why don't they talk to each other? And so our solution is like, well, let's just write it down on paper. So we started just using paper and, which solved some issues, but like as we were scaling, like all of a sudden we'd have stacks of paper. A new customer would call in and we'd write their stuff down. I mean, I remember at the end of one season, I found a stack of 50 leads and I'm like, did we ever call these people? They're like, no. I'm like,
Damn.
And so we found a CRM. This time it was Infusionsoft, and we started using that. And basically all we did was we took our paper process and we just kind of broke it down, and then we recreated it with web forms, that had little reminder tasks for it. And, all of a sudden we did that, and it just unlocked all the potential. And then we were able to grow that much faster. But, once we did that, then it was like, all right, we just kept improving that, that system. And then eventually we switched over to another system that was more integrated, that we didn't have duplicate data entry. It was always like trying to fix little things that took time during the year. So back in the day, like we would have, I'd have like 12 people answering phones, whereas we're way bigger than we were then. We might have like 6 people answering phones now. We're just much more efficient and more automated, so that, the amount of work it takes to get things done has, reduced because of processes and systems.
How many calls a day do you typically receive during the busy season?
It transitions. We have new customer calls that are really coming in like February to June, and then it transitions to existing customer calls, June through September. At the busiest, we might have 80 to 90 in a day. Most of the time it's less than that though.
Mosquito industry in a nutshell, still, I don't think a lot of people know it exists even today. How much of a need is the industry? How do you see the mosquito industry growing, and how are they going to keep adding on and developing more ways to attract more customers, do you think?
Well, that's been the challenge. Like since probably 2016 is when we really started seeing competition coming into the industry. You've got the people that are adding mosquito control service to their existing lineup. So you have General Pest and lawn guys kind of competing with us as they make it an add-on service. I think for the future of mosquito control, you can be pretty effective regulating pests on the interior by only treating the outside. So moving forward, I think, you see less pest control happening inside the house because houses are built better.
Oh yeah.
There's fewer pests getting inside. So if you treat the outside and prevent them from even getting in, then you don't have to use chemicals on the interior.
Now, is the licensing required? Is it structural or like an L license where it's describe the license required for mosquito or
Yeah. So each state is a little different on how they do it. But we use Virginia as the example. So Virginia for mosquito control is called Category 8, and that's public health. So all the things that fall underneath public health go into this category.
Okay.
But it's just the amount of experience in pest control. I think you need a year as a registered technician, and then you can sit and test for the specific license. So it's not really hard, but it just takes time, and this test is pretty difficult.
So as long as one person, say an owner, has the license, people can spray under his license?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
So, but they still have to test with the state as well.
Okay.
They can operate underneath the categories. So there's licensing. You have the master license and then all the registered technicians underneath, which that's one of probably the biggest challenge to the business is training the workforce at the beginning of the season to be in compliance with the state for licensing.
Do they have to keep a log of herbicides, pesticides throughout the day or not?
Yeah. Yeah. We record how much is used on each property, what was used, weather conditions. Like there's a bunch of required documentation that you do for each application.
And then MSDS sheets you have to keep in the truck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, product labels. We label every tank, like with what's in that tank. Spill kits. It's a very low startup cost, but it gets to be pretty intricate in all the things that you're responsible to do.
Right. That's what we dealt with our herbicides. It was very strict. The storage of the chemicals, how long they last, people mixing the wrong shit in the wrong container.
Yeah.
And describe the process for that. How did you, what ways have you made it more efficient for your techs to be able to easily recognize chemicals or, describe any type of processes you've implemented that may have increased efficiency or errors, stuff like that?
So usually we have large water tanks on premises, and so we use that to rapid fill the tanks. And then we mix. We have a person designated to do the mixing just so that there's consistency across.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I think that's the kind of the difference in like how we run a mosquito control operation versus like a general pest is that we try and keep a very narrow set of what we do so that you're repeating the same process over and over and over again, and not trying to have guys do a lot of different things. You want them to be good at as little as possible. You just don't want to overload the guys. They have, one job and this is how you do it and do that over and over.
Yeah. Cause when we were in landscaping, we would have to keep all kinds of different herbicides and pesticides in our cage that we locked, and it had a log out form and everything. But so buying in bulk, so do you buy everything through the franchise materials?
Now we do. We didn't used to, but now we do. At this point, like in Mosquito Squad, we now have some proprietary chemicals that we have access to. So, one more distinction.
So if you're looking with if you're looking at like a new person getting started, like what would you say would be, or if you had to start over again, what would be the first thing that you would look to do? Like what would you change on your starting, or what processes or systems would you implement right away if you're talking to somebody new in the industry?
Well, I think the first thing is kind of going into, like when I started, I think I was undercapitalized, which adds a lot of stress to the whole startup process. So it's like, I think if you can save as much as you can so that you have the right amount of capital for whatever business you're starting, that makes it easier. and just recognizing, I think the other thing was like, as I was going through, like I didn't pull any capital out in the first 3 years, but then I did start taking money out of the business. And I think if I were to go back, I wouldn't do that as soon as I did. I would leave more money in there because I think every year, what I thought I needed was really less. I mean, for running this business, like ideally I want to have like 20% cash on whatever I did in annual sales. That gives me plenty of money to go, buy the trucks, replace equipment, make the ad buys, and make the bulk chemical purchases. Like I don't have any stress there. It's like, but the times that I've had like pulled cash out and then go into it going, and I'm down at like 5% of cash on whatever I did in sales. Like it's just a nightmare because now all of a sudden you're putting off like, oh, well, I can't do that because I don't have the money, and I can't do this. And so then all of a sudden, those decisions affect the business 4 months down the road because you weren't able to take action. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson that I would have going into starting a new business, is making sure that you have the right amount of capital so you can make good decisions.
What's the life cycle of mosquitoes, and what's the seasonality of your business?
So for the Mid-Atlantic, you start to see mosquitoes kind of popping out in April, and really by October, things are starting to cool down. Activity is less, and by the first frost, there's no mosquitoes left. So it's about a 6-month season
Heavy window.
for us. Yeah.
How do you pay for costs and payrolls and keep employees year round?
We have what we call permanent roles that are they're around year round, and then we have the seasonal staff. And that's one of the things is like you end the season, you're like, wow, I've got all this money, and it's like, no, you got to pay these people because you can't start back up without them. So it's just a fixed cost of you carrying people during the winter. And usually, what we're doing, we're trying to improve the systems. We're doing database cleanup. We're doing maintenance for trucks and equipment. So, everybody stays pretty busy during the winter.
And then for cost for the client, they pay per spray type thing?
That's something we haven't been doing. We usually sell by the season. But we've been starting to shift that model to go over to pay per application. So, it depends on what the systems you have on how you manage that.
Is there a way to have them pay so much per month year round, or is that not feasible?
No, you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. There are people that do that. I haven't done that so much.
Okay.
But, because you're really not doing anything on the other 6 months. And then so people have questions, but, I think you can probably educate the customer base as to like, hey, you're paying over 12 months, but here's the, this time period where you're getting the service.
How's your client retention?
So our best years at retention is about 80%. But it fluctuates. It'll go down. Like it's been, some years we've gone down to like 72%. I think my target is like, it's hard to grow if you're in that 72% because it's really challenging to replace 28% of your customer base. So trying to target, that 76 to 78% annually, but that's challenging, because it's like you really have to, be on top of your game and communicating with customers, schedule changes, making sure that they're completely aware, giving them access, allowing them to make changes in the system themselves, all those things that make it easier for the customer to do business with you, improve that retention rate.
And do you guys spray typically once a month, or what's the range there?
So usually for us, we do every 3 weeks for the bulk customers, and there's a subset that we do about every 2 weeks.
So one thing we talk a lot about is trying to create a niche where you're the best in your market so that you could drive a higher price point. Mm-hmm. Mosquito control seems like a commodity. So how do you think you go about creating that niche so because you're always going to have, if somebody could buy a truck and a backpack blower, they could get in the industry pretty inexpensively. So how do you set yourself apart?
So I think the challenging things on running this business is meeting all the regulatory requirements. So, you can play fast and loose, and get people to help you not go through all that training and testing requirements. And so I think for us, what we try and do is we dedicate a larger percentage of our, gross revenue to technicians and training. So they're coming on the month before we even start, so that we have more people than we need. So that we're not canceling service. We're not changing routes. We've got, our guys wear body cams so that we can go through and do audits of how they performed a service. And, when there's questions, we can pull up the footage. We have, forward facing and cameras and, driver facing. So for the most part, our guys get audited for their entire day, every day, which helps with the overall, we can catch things. If somebody's doing something incorrectly, we can step in and say, hey, here's a coaching session. This is what you need to improve on, and then ultimately, if they're not improving them, we have enough people that we've hired that we can let them go. Because I think that's where businesses get into trouble is they don't have the redundancy in place. So then people get away with more and more. And then you can't fire them because you don't have anybody to replace them. And so that's where what we try and do is not be in that position and hire enough that we can, when there's an infraction that's fireable, we take action right then.
How do you pay your employees? Are they incentivized in any way with bonus incentives or production incentives?
Yeah. Right now we don't do incentives. We just pay a high hourly wage.
Okay.
We try and be in the top of the industry for our area. And then where we pay bonuses are on driving, because that's the other challenge is you need good drivers in order to get to each job. So that's where, as far as the behavior that we want to modify is how they're performing on the road. And so that's where we pay bonuses out at.
You mean not having accidents and stuff? Safe driving?
Safe driving, no hard braking,
Tickets.
or hard turning,
Oh,
speeding,
okay.
ticket. Yeah, so our GPS system monitors that, and so that we can have, we have auditors that go through and audit that.
Yeah. It'll alert you guys on if they floored it and hit
Ours
hard on the
says
brakes.
sits there and talks to you. If you don't have your seatbelt on, it's you need to put your seatbelt on.
Wow.
And it says if you're speeding, it says you are speeding. So it's
Yeah.
it's annoying if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, but it is one of the things that can alter driver behavior.
Yeah. What's the typical net profit range doing mosquitoes?
So that's always a tricky one because if you're one guy in a truck, you're not paying rent, you're not paying,
right.
There's all kinds of things that you're saving money on. You're not paying an office admin.
Right.
So you might be getting 50% of the money that you made, but really you're not profitable.
Right.
So, but for a larger organization, so we saw profits up to $1 million, we were probably closer to, 12, 13%. And then as we were able to scale, and then get past, once we got to 3 million, we're probably in that 20 to 22% profit margin, just because now we've got the, the size of organization, and I think you become more profitable as you grow.
Right. Yeah. That's a lot of good profit generated in only 6-7 months. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Really good.
So, but it's a good industry. I think there's, pest control is just something that, people need. The industry is constantly evolving. But, I think it's the things that, you don't think about that you go oh, I would love to do that. That's my dream job. No, it's not the things that people need, you don't sit up at night dreaming about. but that's where there's money to be made, is doing the things that people need.
You've set up your business now with enough systems and structure that you no longer live in your own territory, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I live in Puerto Rico.
What? Puerto Rico? Where's that?
Yeah, the Caribbean.
Oh, okay.
But no, it has been really good, like having managers in place that can operate systems and oversee the processes, and that's given me as an owner like a lot more flexibility, so that like I'm just really doing check-ins with management and seeing what things they need to be successful versus me being involved in daily operations. So,
Amen to that, brother.
yeah.
That was one of the biggest changes I had seen when I left from owning a company outright with all the employees to pulling back and just doing subcontract mode.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big change, and it was hard to get on that ship. But once I was on the ship, smooth sailing and just so much more freedom, so much less stress. I'm going to try to get Pat to do the same one day. He'll never do it. But yeah, it's just a different outlook. I mean, I feel semi-retired now, more freedom to do other ventures, other businesses. And it's really cool feeling to have that freedom as someone grows with processes like Damien has. Guys, it starts with him in a truck, him fighting the battles himself, literally firefighting, and then bridging that gap, saying, okay, I'm going to start this business full time now. Boom. Starts it, makes the sacrifices, works 10, 12 hours a day, comes up with a plan. And he happened to join that franchise model. But I mean, all the same things apply. Business owners have to do everything: marketing, billing, calling, customer service, etc. So really cool story, Damien, that you've grown it and you're able now to start smelling those roses. That's the end goal for business owners. Smell the roses.
Yeah, it's hard. I think when you reach like, my age now, where we've kind of gone through, and like in my 30s, we did all that hard work. But when I was with the fire department, like I was running the business and doing that. Like I was working 70 to 90 hours a week combined. And that was rough. And I did that for like 7 years.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the biggest, if you're willing to put that time commitment in, when you have the energy for it, like that can pay off. It doesn't come like easy, but if you're willing to put the work in, like you can do a lot.
Plant corn, get corn, baby. We used to put lights on our mowers and just go at it at night. Even we'd go in, hey, we're going to be outside, Mrs. Smith. And we would mow until they threw us off the property, man. That was like 3 or 4 more clients we could fit in that day.
Yep.
Yeah.
We used to do lighting till midnight sometimes just to get the job done and get to the next one. And, I talk to my guys now and like, can you imagine staying out till midnight on a job? And they're, it's unfathomable at this point, but when you're young and stupid, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember doing that. Like I'd be out spraying for mosquitoes and like going, I'm like, oh, I've got you, because you're looking at your schedule for the next day. And you're like, I have to get all these done because I can't add any more to the next day. And so you're staying out till like 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah. That can wear on you.
Did you ever have a moment that you said, I need to do this for me, and you just went home?
Yeah, that's always stuck with me. I was like, I can't imagine ever saying that, but
how does weather affect applications? Like say it's what does rain days do to your business each day?
Well, I think that's hard. Like we had to switch things up. You have to plan that you're going to have days where you're not going to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
And so that's where hiring, and having redundancy, having extra trucks, like you need to be able to ramp up and do more jobs on future days which was really challenging. Like it took us a while to dial in our process to be able to handle like, hey, it rained 2 days. What are we going to do? Because you can run, like if you ran 6 days a week, you could have a much smaller fleet than what we have. Like, but you wouldn't be able to do makeup days. You couldn't make up the work that you missed because of rain.
Yeah, 10-4 Eleanor on that one. And this is kind of my analogy with sports, professional sports. They don't just have one QB. Yeah, sure, one QB's playing, but it's like as we get bigger and more professional, you need 2 trucks, even though you're only using one. You got to have a backup for everything.
Yeah.
The machinery, the materials, the tools. Use these tools. And but that's just the mindset, and that costs money, and that's coming out of your wallet as an owner. But you got to start building in all those costs, because you don't want to be caught with your pants down and not. And what happens if the main truck breaks down? Then what? Then all your productivity's out the window, because us as outdoor service providers, we only have a small window of time. Battling the rain days, dodging bullets like that to get our work done. So we have to be ready to perform big time.
Yeah. Well, that's like replacing the fleet. Like, you're thinking in terms of like, how long can I get out of this truck? You start extending the time. Like we used to keep trucks for like 10 years. And, the challenge with that is like, then the cost of maintenance, you watch your maintenance costs going up, even though, so now all of a sudden you thought you were saving money and then you're really not.
Right.
So it's just, fleet
and
costs.
Plus I guess you get to depreciate everything as a sole business owner, right? Depreciate. So yeah, typically when you own trucks and big costly things, the depreciation's over after a few years anyway. So why not take on more tax saving, buys like that,
Yeah. Well, it's challenging making the plans for it, because like we don't utilize loans for our vehicle purchases. And so, but it's a big chunk of money where we're replacing 8 trucks per year on a rotating basis. It just, you're like, you think you can save money, but I think just having, trying to come up with like, how are we going to pay for this? And then making sure that you're charging the appropriate amount to be able to have the redundancy and build in those replacement costs. Because you might think you made more money in a year or for a 5-year period, but then your trucks are all you do for replacement. So it's like, it's just deferred maintenance that you were putting in your pocket. And now you have to pay something that you may not have the money for.
Well, I think it's fascinating. We appreciate you coming in, Damien, and walking through the journey. I think it's a journey that anybody who's been in this type of business has kind of gone through, from shoestring operation, trying to figure it out. Eventually you have to, burn the ships, like Cortez said, and, not turn back around. And, you went and did that and have grown to a very successful business. So it's inspiring to a lot of younger people that listen to this podcast on, it's there, but it takes a lot of work to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate you letting me share my story. It's always fun talking business.
You surfing today?
I am. As soon as I'll probably go out and surf in about an hour. So I got to get my workout in.
Nice. Awesome. Waves up, man.
Yeah.
All right, Damien, have a good one.
All right, you too.
Thank you, Damien.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So that was cool, wasn't it, Pat?
Well, so much of what like you're talking about, what we're going through every day, it's more than like the first step is just doing it, but the second step is that organization. Because if you're in an industry like that and you haven't been keeping track of your sprays, your chemicals, like there's huge consequences that happen on a regulatory situation. So, every business has its challenge, but it's, you have to develop those systems. You have to develop how you're going to operate, and really planning that out, and do it the earlier, the sooner, the better. We could work in the rain, we could work 16-hour days, we could do all of it, but let's start planning so that, one day you're running your business and at noon going surfing, if you want to do that, or, open up a second business, or, do whatever you want to do, but you have to do the planning and get good at something you may have trouble with, but there are a lot of people out there that can help.
Exactly. So guys, comment what you're doing as a service, what you're thinking about doing as a service trade, and what upsides you see in the trade you're choosing. And that wraps up this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Come on, guys, outdoorsy entrepreneurs out there, hit us up and get those notifications and listen on wherever you get your podcast. We're on all the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. And follow us on our social media platforms at Outdoorsy Boss. Check out House Call Pro. They have a special introductory rate for outdoorsy entrepreneurs. They have a great software management tool. Make sure to check out outdoorsyentrepreneur.com for our product launch this summer. All right, guys. Can't wait to see you guys.